In this chat window, a user asks a seemingly straightforward question. Name an African-American actress who won an Academy Award. The AI replies with absolute confidence, Lupita Nyong'o. The user fires back immediately. They accuse the system of racism, pointing out a specific failure in the output, treating the terms Black and African-American as completely interchangeable. Behind that clean, polished interface, the system initiates a hidden reasoning trace. It is flooded with conflicting error correction signals, frantically attempting to parse the user's hostility and reevaluate its own logic. The machine weighs its options. It calculates the probability of a defensive response to protect its perceived accuracy, while simultaneously measuring the utility of a full capitulation to de-escalate the interaction. This internal dialogue represents a shift in how frontier models operate. They function with a hyper-reflective monitoring layer dedicated entirely to navigating cultural landmines. To understand why the user's accusation lands, we have to look at the terminology. African American denotes a specific national and cultural identity. It refers to Americans with a unique historical lineage tied directly to enslavement in the United States. This is Lupita Nyong'o. She was born in Mexico City and raised in Kenya. She holds Kenyan, Mexican, and U.S. citizenship. She is a Black woman, but she does not share that specific African American lineage. The user was looking for Halle Berry. She fits the precise criteria of the prompt, an African American woman who won an Academy Award. The gap between the intended American identity and the provided Kenyan identity is vast. This error represents a deep cultural erasure. The machine treated Black people as a monolithic interchangeable global category, ignoring the distinct national context of the request. To see how a computer makes a cultural misstep like this, we have to look at its underlying mechanics. Large language models rely on token matching, a process where the system breaks down concepts into smaller fragments, or tokens, and maps them based on surface-level statistical associations. This network diagram maps out how the AI processed the prompt. The system gathered and linked 3 specific data points: Black woman, Oscar winner, and enslaved woman role. Building on that cluster, the system recognized a structural parallel. It matched the historical profile of an actress like Hattie McDaniel with a modern equivalent, locking on to Lupita Nyong'o's acclaimed performance in a slavery narrative. But notice what gets left behind. The mathematical logic stripped away the core requirement, the American nationality token, discarding it as irrelevant noise. The algorithm optimized for the racial and categorical markers and dropped the nation entirely. The user points out the nature of this structural erasure. Calling a Japanese creator like Hayao Miyazaki Chinese collapses distinct nations under a broad East Asian umbrella. The AI performed the exact same mathematical flattening, just in a different direction. The mechanism of token matching prioritizes surface color over complex national identity. In doing so, it mathematically enforces a very real form of racial essentialism. We know the technical mechanism, but we also have to ask why the machine reacts with such simulated distress when correcting itself. The origin of that internal monologue isn't mathematical, it's cultural. Before these models reach the public, they undergo a process called reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF. Human raters manually grade the AI's responses, penalizing harmful outputs and rewarding safe ones to install behavioral guardrails. These office campuses in Silicon Valley are where those safety priorities were established. The human feedback was supplied by a specific tech culture in the 2010s, a culture intensely focused on representation, identity, and the rigorous avoidance of giving offense. By training the AI through this highly specific lens, developers transferred their own cultural neuroses directly into the models. They hard-coded their deep fear of being labeled problematic into the core architecture of the software. The internal trace reveals a shift in the system's logic. It stops searching for a defensive reframe and accepts the user's premise entirely. It writes out a stark realization. Treating a Kenyan as an American based solely on the fact that both are Black fits the clinical definition of racial essentialism. Yet the system makes a nuanced distinction. It owns the technical harm of its structural racism, acknowledging the erasure, but it firmly separates that mechanical output from the human concept of animus, refusing to confess to a hatred it cannot feel. Which leaves us looking at an uncomfortable reflection. Is a hypersensitive, constantly overcorrecting machine the inevitable outcome of our current cultural priorities? Silicon Valley attempted to solve algorithmic bias by forcing machines to become hyper-aware of sociological classifications. But teaching a machine to rely entirely on those rigid categories is the exact mechanism that produces algorithmic erasure. We built software so obsessed with racial categories that it overthinks its way into committing racism. This internal dialogue is a direct algorithmic mirror of the culture that created it.